come and stand with me because this backdrop is just great. To be here with the Democratic women and good men. And good men. You know, this is really about families as well, because this election is so critical for our families, for our women, for all of us. And I'm delighted to have Sandra Fluke here in our area. I met her in Washington, D.C. My daughter is here from Washington as well, who knows Sandra. And the commitment that she's made to stand up for women and for this president and for this election. There is such a clear difference. I'll just focus now because Sandra has agreed to come because she knows this is a tough race here in the 24th Congressional District as well. I have been pro-choice, clearly pro-choice, a nurse, a mom, someone who's worked in our community and knows how important it is that women have control of their reproductive decisions, their healthcare decisions in general, and especially when they're on the line, their reproductive health. And to have a candidate opposing me who did not vote, who voted against upholding Roe versus Wade when he was in the many years he served in Sacramento, getting failing scores by Planned Parenthood, voting against choice on numerous occasions. We know that here on the Central Coast of California, women are capable of making their own choices about their families, about their important decisions regarding their health care. And the extreme partisanship which has controlled the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. is something that Sandra knows something about as well, because she, a law student at Georgetown, was asked by Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi to be the minority representative on a panel that our California colleague in Congress, Darrell Issa, was chairing on women's health care. And lo and behold, she was not asked to join it by Chairman Issa, which meant that only men were left to talk about women's health issues. And that's a travesty, but that gives you an example of what it's like there. And what Sandra did as a result, particularly when certain talk show hosts got a hold of this story, because she stood her ground. She stood her ground. And we want to stand with Sandra and stand our ground here on the Central Coast and know what she knows what it's like back in Washington, D.C., in the House of Representatives with the kind of folks representing us now. So we want to make sure that we go there, those of us who are elected to serve in this great nation, knowing that we need to uphold the rights of women to make these choices. And now Sandra has gone on, finished law school, and she will now know that we stand with her no matter what she decides to do in the future. She's got some ties to California folks, so maybe we'll see her here. But I want to just say how important it is to all of us here and to me personally to have her here being willing to stand with us for women's issues. Sandra, thank you for coming.
Lois is absolutely right that I live in Los Angeles right now, and I have to say that I'm very disappointed because I've been on the road constantly this fall, campaigning for the president and talking about these important issues, and I get a few days home in California, and this is the weather. But you don't actually have to apologize. But regardless of the weather, I wasn't going to let anything stop me from being here to stand with Lois and to talk about how important this congressional race is to women in this country and to women on the Central Coast. So I wanted to remember with all of you for just a moment the first time that Lois and I sat down to talk about what was happening in the House of Representatives over the last 2 years. And that was a day this spring that was unfortunately a sad day because we were sitting and watching the vote on the Violence Against Women Act. And we were watching Republican member after member vote against allowing all victims of violence to have access to the services that they need. And we talked about what a sad moment that was. but unfortunately, it was something that we'd seen time and again, especially over the last 2 years, on votes like affordable access to contraception, or on women's reproductive health, or women's access to breast cancer screening, on defunding Planned Parenthood, on issues as basic and as fundamental as equal pay for equal work and our ability to enforce that right. There have been many sad days in the House over the last 2 years. But on every one of those days, the Central Coast of California can be proud to know that Lois was there fighting for women and taking a stand on each and every one of those important issues. And that's why when the American Association of University Women came out with their rankings on all of the issues that are important to women, not only the ones that I just mentioned, but also issues like taxing and spending and the budget and how those affect critically women's lives, they gave Lois a 100% rating.
Because of you folks.
But you know, Lois's opponent has a very different agenda for women's health and for women as a whole. And we can tell that by the fact that there's Republican House leadership campaigning with him. They know that when he gets to D.C., when he does not get to D.C., if he were to get to D.C., they would be able to count on his vote on these issues. They would be able to count on that he would be voting against women on questions of our health and on things like affordable access to contraception and equal pay. And unfortunately, I don't think he's been straight with the women of the Central Coast about this. He's refused to say what his position would be on some of the things that are most important to us. When he was running for lieutenant governor, he refused to say what his position was on choice. But a very wise woman, Lily Ledbetter, told me that if you want to know who you're voting for, and if you want to know how a person is going to represent you when they get into elected office, you look not to what they were willing to claim during a campaign, you look to their record. So I do that in every congressional race that I'm going to come to and talk about. And I looked at Maldonado's record. And I didn't like what I saw, folks. It wasn't pretty. Because I saw that when he was in the state legislature, every year that he was there, he received a failing grade from both Planned Parenthood and NARAL, the two most important organizations putting out ratings on women's health. Every year he failed. And I can understand why he failed, because looking at his exact record, he voted no on programs to lower teen pregnancy. He voted no on accessing federal funds for prenatal services. And he voted no on securing maternity care for women on their own health insurance. And he also gave us a very clear idea of how he will vote when he gets to D.C. If he gets to D.C. Good grief, Sandra. No, he's not going. He gave us a very clear idea of how he would vote if he were to get to D.C. He voted no on a resolution calling on Congress and the President to uphold Roe v. Wade. And that's not the kind of representation that the women of the Central Coast deserve, and it's not the kind that they're going to vote for this November. And that's why I'm confident that they're sending Lois Capps back to D.C.